Hello from North Carolina. My name is Emili Pickenpaugh. I wanted to start off by thanking you for accommodating me and allowing me to do this over video. I'm a little sad I couldn't be there to meet you and shake all of your hands, but I'm so grateful for this opportunity and look forward to answering all of your questions. The first experience that comes to mind for me was a recent one. I've worked with suicidal ideation for a while now. I volunteer as a Trevor Chat counselor with the Trevor Project. It's an online suicide prevention chat resource for LGBTQ+ youth. It's helped me get used to doing suicide assessments and making safety plans. So whenever I started my internship, I felt very comfortable doing that. A couple weeks ago, I had a client that was very suicidal and had a very detailed plan. And it was interesting for me to hear that in person. I'd only ever heard a detailed plan over chat before. But together we made a safety plan that was as detailed as her suicide plan. We wrote down steps of what she was going to do whenever she started feeling upset, if that wasn't working, what the next steps were, people she could contact, talking to her family members, and then emergency resources that were local and national. And lastly was telling her mom that she needed to go to the hospital. Her parents were aware of her suicidal thoughts, and it was going to be a big step if she needed to do that. This was on a Friday afternoon, and after she left, we got a call not long after, and she had told her mom, and they were on their way to the hospital. While it was difficult for me in the moment, I was thinking, was there something I didn't do to help her get through this weekend? I realized that I had succeeded. I got her to the hospital if that's where she needed to be. We had made this plan, and she followed it. The things weren't working for her, and she needed to be in a place that she was going to be guaranteed to be safe. Since then, she's returned to treatment and continues to use this plan with her suicidal thoughts. She's told me that doing the smaller step things have been really helpful in getting through the day-to-day things, and that she knows whenever it gets bad what she needs to do to keep herself safe and the people that she can rely on in those moments. I feel more competent in my abilities after this experience. Suicide is probably the most serious thing we can face working as a clinician. Knowing that I was able to make a safety plan with somebody and that she was able to implement that made me feel like I can be effective. Getting feedback from clients and seeing small improvements is always nice, but I got a much bigger boost in confidence knowing that the suicide safety plan I made was put into action and potentially saved this young girl's life, at least for the time being. I know that Dr. Rings does a lot of research with suicide, especially with the veteran population. That's something I'm super interested in. Working with people that are experiencing suicidal thoughts for over a year now has really enlightened me into how things could feel like this is the only way out. I have a lot of empathy with this population, and helping them brainstorm ways that they can deal with it and get through this rough time has been amazing, and it makes me feel like I'm in the right place and doing the right things, and that I've chosen the right path to follow with my career. To be an effective future psychologist, I need to work on my assertiveness. I do not like confrontation and find this very challenging. I'm realizing in my internship that I'm not pushing my clients as much as I could, and they're not going as deep as they could where the real work needs to happen. And this is all on me. I'm trying to work on being assertive in every area of my life, but especially as a clinician. I think that if I can learn to push them and challenge them in ways, they'll know that that is going to be the expectancy, and they'll be more willing to go deep with me, but I need to figure out how to get them there to initially do it. The most challenging feedback I've received this far was in my play therapy class. I taped 5 sessions with a child, and one of my individual supervision meetings, my professor told me that it was just not a good session. This was hard for me to hear because I'm a perfectionist. I want everything that I do to be good, and I want to help every person that I work with as much as I can. It was hard for me to hear that I wasn't effective in this session, but it was important for me to hear that and to know that not every session is going to be great, and to figure out what was happening and why this was occurring. I realized that I was not feeling well, I was a little drowsy and not really present with the child. I wasn't doing all the skills that I knew. I wasn't helping the child as well as I could have. And recognizing this allowed me to do better in my future sessions. It was hard, and at first it felt very personal to me. I started to question if this was something that I should do as a career if I had this horrible session. How was I going to be an effective counselor or psychologist? And I realized that I was being dramatic, and that wasn't the point of this feedback, and that's not the point of supervision. It's to get better. It's to recognize what my areas of weakness are and to work on those and to grow. And while it was challenging in the moment, it's definitely made me better. It made me a better play therapist, but also a better therapist with every client that I've worked with since then. I think the most critical issue in today's society is the political climate. No matter where you lie personally on this, a lot of people feel unsafe right now and are having a very rough time. A lot of minority populations, especially with sexual orientation, gender, religion, nationality, skin color, are feeling very scared right now. They're not sure how things are going to play out with Donald Trump being president and with the changes that are being implemented. These feelings are very valid, and as clinicians, this is going to be a difficult thing to deal with. It's hard because there's nothing that our clients can do about it. They're going to continue to feel unsafe, and so helping them be okay with that is very challenging. Another potential impact on psychology from the political climate is how insurance will be changed. I know there are things being put into motion that will make a big change in healthcare insurance, and that could potentially change mental health care as well. And I think a lot of therapists are thinking about their businesses, their private practices, and how things are going to be impacted by this. And there's just a lot of uncertainty and fear right now, and those are difficult things to deal with in therapy. And with things being moved around a lot in the budget, it's difficult to know where money will lie for research. I think there's still so much that needs to be researched, especially with a lot of these minority populations. And it's possible that that won't be funded even though it needs to be done. That could bring up a lot of fear for a lot of psychologists as well, because this is our livelihood and perhaps it's not going to be funded anymore. To develop as a researcher within a PhD program, I think my biggest step will be honing my research interests. I have such a wide variety of interests, which I think is a good way to go into this field. I'm really interested in the intersect of crime and mental health. I love working with the eating disorder population. I'm really interested in couples work and how that impacts mental health as well. I know that there's a lot of research that doing couples work can help an individual that has a specific mental health issue. I'm also really interested in working with children, especially children of veterans, as my father's in the military. I know that you all do a lot of interesting work, that Dr. Johnson works with kids, that there's couples work being done, that there is work being done. In a lot of these areas that I have interest, I would love the opportunity to explore these in different research labs and figure out where my main focus lies for me. I've had a wide variety of research experiences. I volunteered in a wet lab. I had a project from start to finish, including getting grant funding, running survey experiments, and running through the data. I also helped write a computer program for another student's study. Having all these experiences was really helpful, but I would love to be a part of a bigger project and see all that goes into it and how somebody can go through all of those steps and have a long-term project. I would also love to help in any way that I can. I think that research is so fascinating, and even in the back end of the data that can become so tedious, it's really interesting to see what comes of it. After I hone in those specific interests, I think that long-term in my future, I could develop as a researcher by taking on my own research project. Hopefully someday I could do funded research and publish results and make an impact in a lot of lives and not just the lives of the people that I work with specifically. I would love to find a balance in being a clinician, a researcher, and maybe even a psychoeducator in some way. I really appreciate research and would love the opportunity in the future to do my own and provide that to other people so that we can continue to grow our knowledge base and help people as best as we can. There are a lot of different ways that psychologists can function as agents of change in the community at large. I see three major ways. The first way is with our clients. Each of us sees so many different people every day. Being able to empower our clients and help them in ways that they can then go on and do things that they're passionate about leads to a much bigger change than any of us could do individually. The second way is through research. Researching new solutions to old problems or to entirely new things that have come up in the field can impact a lot of individuals and provide them with help that they need that they weren't previously able to get. Or it can educate people in ways that we weren't able to do before. The third way is through advocacy. I think advocacy is so important in this field and is often overlooked. We need to be able to advocate for our clients in the community, making sure that they have all of their needs met, that they have access to any resources they need. We also need to be able to advocate for big picture issues. The first one I think of is with the stigma around mental health. Being able to provide psychoeducation, attending community events, writing journal articles, all of these things lead to information being put out there for people so that they can better understand the community and what we do. We have a lot of opportunity to affect change, but I think it's often overlooked, not only by psychologists in the field, but by other fields who underestimate how much we can do. The only situation I could think of for this question was during my practicum. I did my practicum in the Mecklenburg County Jail and worked with the male population. While I was doing this, there was an inmate that worked with a different counseling practicum student. I heard from one of my clients that he thought I didn't like him and was judging him, which was definitely not true. This was an older man. He was African American and was convicted of multiple crimes. He was in the county jail waiting to be transferred to prison to serve a long-term sentence. He felt that I was judging him and perhaps I didn't understand him and that I felt scared around him. To work on my assertiveness, I asked to speak with him one day. I clarified that I did not mean to judge him and apologized if I was giving that impression in any way. I asked him what I could do to improve. He said that he felt like I smiled at everyone else and not at him, so I made a point to be extra friendly with him in the future. I think he received this impression because of our cultural differences. I was this young Caucasian woman coming in wearing professional clothes, which would present me as being in a higher economic class than he was perhaps, and I'm there giving them counseling, which they perceive as advice, even though I had to clarify this a lot with them. I think this can be applied to a counseling situation because we need to think of how things are going to be perceived immediately upon meeting a client and how important our body language is. I had not considered how I was coming across to him until after this conversation. I didn't think about how it could be seen that I wasn't smiling at everybody, and even though that wasn't intentional, I needed to be more intentional with it. I take a very phenomenological view of counseling. Every person has their own view on the world and their own culture, and we need to be aware of that and think about how we're being perceived, how we're perceiving them, how our body language and verbal language could be coming across, and it's really just something to be mindful with every interaction that we have with others, but especially in a therapeutic relationship. My theoretical orientation is sort of in between CBT and humanistic therapy. I like CBT because it has a lot of steps and it has a lot of plans and it's very organized, and that is true of myself. I like for things to be laid out and to know what's coming next. I do like some flexibility, so I think that CBT offers that. It's not so laid out and straightforward that you can't do different things if necessary and if it feels like it would be helpful. I also really like humanistic therapy because I like to be present with my clients and to try to empathize with them and understand what's going on. I think that that is such an important part of therapy, and being able to do both of those together is sort of what works for me. I like following the general guidelines with CBT and incorporating thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, but I like to do it in a humanistic way and to show them that I care and I understand and that I get that this is hard and this is how we're going to do something about it. I've recently been looking into acceptance and commitment therapy a lot as well. I think that I would like this a lot, of using mindfulness and incorporating different ways to follow those same sort of guidelines, but having a more open way of doing it. Clients experiencing active psychosis are the most difficult for me. There's a woman in my internship right now who has some hallucinations and delusions but doesn't quite meet the criteria for schizophrenia. She does have an eating disorder, so she's in our treatment, but she needs some additional support for her hallucinations and delusions. I find it challenging because I want to be able to buy into her reality and be there with her, but I'm not sure how effective that is from a treatment standpoint. It's also difficult because this just isn't an area that I have a lot of expertise in. I haven't really been taught much about it in my program or at my internship site. I want to be able to learn more about it and figure it out, and I hope with more practice I would be more effective with clients that have active psychosis, especially in an individual setting. I think it's also challenging because I do work with a large group of girls at the same time. I don't want to take away from anyone else by giving her more attention, even though I feel like that's something she needs. I feel like it would be harmful to the other girls' treatment, and that's difficult to balance. I think the last things I would like for you to know about me are that I'm very dedicated and hardworking. I'm really passionate about making a difference in people's lives, and I see psychology as a huge way to do that. I have a lot of interest in being a clinician, a researcher, and potentially someday a professor to continue to make an impact through this field. I really appreciate your consideration for this program, and again, thank you for accommodating me and not being able to be present for the day. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from you.